it's so we're gonna have a great. You know what? Friday night, it's lady nights over here. We have a great lineup coming here in March. I'm super excited to kind of. For the longest time, I was the only. I mean, we had a lot of other shows over here, but live show on Friday night, I was the only one. And to have three great programming, two ladies who have been in the field, who have rocked the field for years, coming and joining the network. I've been fielding emails left and right from people who are just super excited. Even Erica is like, is it March yet? And I'm like, no, I know. I said, we're still waiting to get everything all together with our voiceover guys and stuff, but it's super excited. And, let's talk a little bit more, and I will save the last half an hour. We'll get into kind of what your show is detailing and some of the great guests you've got coming on your show. I mean, you sent them over to me and I'm going through and I'm like, wow, talk about 2 months worth of programming. Whew. Just great programming. But so you're part of this program. People forget with our technology. I mean, we're so engulfed with our cell phones, with all this technology. It amazes me when people can't put two and two together. Just stop for a second, people, and think. Your cell phone is what? Your cell phone is a wireless technology. Your laptops are wireless technology. You have information going left and right, left and right, left and right. In the air, we don't see. Our brain is nothing more than a computer. Why do so many people find it so hard to believe that our government, with this whole, Star Wars campaign that was even put when Ronald Reagan was in the 80s, why can't people grasp the concept of our government being able to control people? And, a lot of people have talked about a lot of these shootings that have happened are being people who are being controlled by our government.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah, there are quite a few that actually have been through some kind of a what I call directed energy weapon or psychotronic harassment. Yeah, there's no doubt about it. And it pushes them. These technologies are designed to push a target into reacting or doing something sometimes irrational. And that would be some of the naval yard shooter we discussed before, I believe. Might have been on Misha's show, but yeah, that happens.
That, I get so upset because I'm a strong component of our government getting out of our lives. I think they've gotten too intrusive and they've gotten too all-powerful. That's not what our founding fathers originally set up in our Constitution. The Constitution has been, crapped on as far as I'm concerned. And I'm not going to get on my high horse and talk about that because most people have never even read the document itself. They couldn't even tell you what the Constitution is because they don't teach it in school anymore. Mm-hmm. But when you start talking about these programs, what I think is interesting is to me, in a way that's great, is this invent of technology, the internet and everything, which has brought not just experiencers, but people who've had similar experiences together. And I think in a great sense, it has been a mindset for people who have had experiences that they can get access to this information because even, I look back, I had my experiences when I was in 2009, but I look back and say, I had experiences when I was a kid. I couldn't quite put two and two together. But it wasn't like you could go to the library, and the library had books on abductions, and it's the same thing. Now you can go into Barnes and Nobles and there's stores, there's books and books on mind control and abductions and everything else that have been written by people that before this was a taboo topic. You didn't talk about it because people would think you're nuts. Mm-hmm. How did you deal with that with your family when you started? Because I know a lot of people, whether you're a contactee, people have been MK'd, when they go public with this, all of a sudden your family wants to step back and go, God, she's nuts. We don't want to have anything to do with her.
Well, it's interesting because what's left of my family, because I did lose my mom in 2004 and then my sister a year later. I've lost a lot of my family members, but the family that remains, they've been very supportive, actually. And they don't really understand the whole technological part of it, but they do know who I am. They know I'm a grounded being. They know I'm not off my rocker. So they know my persona and my personality very well. So that when something like this happens to me, that's not me. So it was very obvious to them. And it was interesting because I did attend my mother's funeral under the duress of the program. And they could tell something was wrong and they couldn't figure out what it was. And then afterwards, after I described the technology, my sister was kind of saying, wow, though that explains how you were acting then. So they were kind of putting it together. But it's a fast track for these guys because they've never been exposed to it. I mean, if I didn't experience it myself, I wouldn't have believed it, to be honest with you. Because it's not something, that I would ever experience normally in my own psyche. So to go through these things, it's quite interesting.
So what I want to get into now is, so you've moved forward, you've gone forward, you're now dealing with this. Do you take, and when, I mean, you're still using your gifts, you're clairvoyant, you're psychic. When people call you, I always, when I hear people say they're psychic, I never believed in a lot of that stuff till I talked to certain psychics. That kind of freaked me out a little bit. But I always find it funny because one of the things when I tell people, oh yeah, I have a friend of mine that's psychic, and they stop for a second, they put their finger to their head, they go, I wonder if she heard that. I'm like, really? I mean, it's sort of like a comedian. You run into a psychic, and the first thing somebody says is, "Oh, read my mind." Like you go see a comedian, they go, "Oh, tell me a joke." It's like,
Right. The thing is, they've kind of overplayed that whole thing with the psychic. Everybody's psychic. So, to put it down on something, it doesn't really, I mean, it means something, but it doesn't. Bottom line is we're all psychic beings. If you fine tune your instrument, your divining rod within, and you're able to access information accordingly, what I call the full akashic. So that's a natural gift, by the way, and that's just something that's been fine tuned over the years. And I still utilize it. I still use it. I do know that a lot of my life has been interrupted for so many years that I have to recapture quite a bit now. So I'm kind of recalibrating.
yeah. Well, I mean, you're doing now when you have martial arts training, and a lot of people that I talk to with martial arts training, you're opening the chakras, which tend to allow your psychic abilities to come forth. I mean, do you think that the being in the martial arts really helped you mentally to deal with what you're dealing with?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, teaching martial arts as a second degree black belt, and also I was state champ for women's kickboxing division in Colorado. So yeah, and also teaching qigong, because qigong, yeah, unifies the chakras. It opens up your energy centers with universal life force energy, what we call qi. So you're able to harness the energy and use it against your opponent if you have to. So yeah, it does help you, and it did help me along the way. I think that I'm a very strong being deep down, so I was able to overcome this abuse, because that's really what it boils down to is directed energy weapon abuse. When push comes to shove, that's what it is. And abuse against the brain with artificial telepathy.
So if you have people who are not sure, they think they may be part of this MK Ultra program, what are some of the signs that people should look for if they at all think that somehow the government is controlling their mind or become part of this AI program?
Well, I would say missing time is a big one. I do know if you're hearing a dialogue and it's not hearing voices in the head like you think it is, it's artificial telepathy, what we call a mock radio communication system, and you'll all of a sudden start hearing it. So it's not like one of these things where you're a child and you have some kind of a schizophrenic brainwave and you're constantly dealing with a multiple personality disorder. Usually this will happen to people if they get hit with MK Ultra in their older years. It's artificial telepathy. It's a real directed energy weapon interface. So those are the things to look for. People who show up in the area like plants, unusual people that you don't know that seem to know you. I mean, things like that sort of happen to unveil or reveal itself. There's so many different levels to it. And of course, there's the other aspect to it, which is uncomfortable for a lot of people. But it's more about sexual abuse as a child and going through physical trauma, sexual trauma to create alters so that they can create an alter personality into that target.
Now, do you consciously remember, because I know, like, I've talked to Misha, and Misha talks about having missing time, and there's a lot of stuff that she was able to kind of get from having like a regression hypnosis, but couldn't get all of it. Can you recall everything, or have you gone under any kind of hypnosis regression for if you've had any missing time to see if you can grasp pieces that you might be missing?
It's interesting because I was so traumatized. All I remember was all the induction. It was like Psychotronic's virtual space 24 hours a day, my life handler. I remember a lot of visuals, and I remember a lot of things they were doing, but they were also running interference with those visuals and dialogue so that they could program me on a deeper level. And no, I haven't gone through regression. I'm almost very leery of that, and I'd have to really trust somebody. I do trust Misha, by the way, but I will tell you that I don't even want to look there. I really don't, because I went into such trauma when I was being programmed that I overrode everything. I just kept saying override, and I kept pushing through and pushing through. So I don't know what's left in the dust right now. At some point, I probably should look into that. But right now, I'm so calibrated and so grounded, I kind of am very leery, to go back there.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think about like the regression. I think about people who have gone through this, and I've always said, Misha's an advocate of regression. I've talked to many who have had positive experiences with regression. I've had many people who have had some negative experiences. one of the things that, my biggest fear, and I don't know, maybe, you can address this as well, is, there's a reason why things are blocked out, whether they intentionally did it or your mind itself blocked out, whether it's too painful or whatever. And I just get concerned that, when you do regression, when you open those floodgates, you can't, it's like Pandora's box. You can't put it back. They can't re-hypnotize you to tell you to forget it. I don't think they can do that.
No, I agree with you 100% on that. I'm very leery too. And like I said, and I don't want anybody to insert something that doesn't belong. First of all, you have to really trust the person that's doing the regression, because if they're inserting or they're suggesting something, then all of a sudden it becomes a scenario in a false matrix and you have to remove it. So that's another thing. You have to be really clear on who's doing the regression and if they're really trustworthy. And of course, certain people are. But for me, I know that my Michael J. Mosbach did a lot of hardcore programming in me with Neil. And I don't even know what's left in there. And I know he's probably the only one that could decode it.
Well, that's what my next question to you would be is, do you fear that maybe there's some programming in there that, 2016, you're going to run into this presidential candidate or something like that, and it's going to trigger a next thing, you're going to do something that, you don't want to do. You don't think so?
No, I don't think so, because I'm not programmed as an assassin. Although I could be one with my martial arts background. There's no doubt. I have a moral compass, and I keep my moral compass based on multidimensional consciousness. I'm very spiritual. So that's my benchmark. And honestly, I have this mechanism. I'm a control freak right now. I don't let anybody take a second seat to me or take the lead. And that means an AI, or that means any handlers. So I'm the one in control. And I've sort of sealed that in to some degree. I don't see that happening, honestly. I do have a mechanism, and I'm not an aggressive, negative person. I can counterattack, but I certainly don't go after people.
What's some great advice you can give to other people out there who know they're part of this program? What great advice, like, a book that, means a lot to you that you've read, how can they, reach out to you to talk to you and groups? Because I would think, just like with, abductee contact groups, there's certain groups that you can go, yeah, I definitely go to this group, or whatever you do, stay clear of this group because it's a front for the CIA or something.
Right. Well, I know Misha's group is one of the better groups to join if you're interested in learning about MK Ultra, or if you feel like you've been part of an MK Ultra program. And of course, you can contact her through the website here, I suppose, at KCOR,
right,
and also on Facebook. So that's one way. Another way, insofar as books go that inspired me, I would say the best book that really awakened me to what was going on was probably Dr. Robert Duncan's Project Soulcatcher. If they really want to understand, insofar as motivation and uplifting goes, I stayed spiritual and I rewrote all the programs. I did positive affirmations. I negated anything negative, and I just kept staying spiritual. I just kept reminding myself of my multidimensional design work. And I think it just basically takes self-determination and really embracing who you are as an ascended being, which is your higher self, and learning to navigate with that higher self, and not letting all this other stuff, the busyness of these programs, get to you.
Well, let me tell you something. The more I look into, like when I got into the paranormal and started looking into everything, the MK Ultras, our technology, even for our government that we use, the biggest thing I would always hear people say is, well, that's all science fiction. It doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. Show me where it exists. I hear that all the time. It's like, show me where it exists. And I'm like, listen, go out. We have patents for technology way back in the 40s and 50s that would blow your mind. And they go, yeah, but it's just patents. Doesn't mean it's been made or perfected or whatever. It's just they're patenting, they're protecting their ideas. And I get that. I understand that. But, when we talk about this technology, and, I've always said there's a reason why our black op projects are black. There's a reason why there's so much money funded. And there's a reason why we're sending satellites up left and right into space, and we want to control space. There's a reason for that. Do you think these programs, if our government's running these programs, do you think they have access to program people in other countries?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's global. There's no doubt about that.
So
yeah.
Could they reach out to, let's say, China's president or Iranian's president or whatever, and reach in and say, because I'm thinking, if they can do that, then why are we even going to war unless it's a money-making thing? Because wouldn't you be able to program the president to, the president of the country you want to take over to just, drop your weapons or whatever?
Right. Well, technically you can, and I'm wondering if they're not programmed to do the opposite, like have a war. that could be part of the cabal wanting this agenda to take place.
See?
They use it for a negative. From what I've seen, they're using it for combat. Everything here with technology has been weaponized, right down to the brain. So we're becoming supercomputer driving systems, and the super soldiers are real. And, what they trained me in was like a super soldier program to some degree. I'm not military, but I might as well have been when I was pulled in, because the people that were incorporated with the band and Michael they have military backgrounds. They're covert. So
now with the remote viewing and stuff like that, I mean, I've heard stories of people who have been able to remote view to the point where they physically can be in the room. And I thought, well, God, if you could remote view and physically be in a room, I mean, you would be the perfect assassin.
Right. Well, the thing is, you can remotely, they call them voodoo hitmen to some degree, but you can remotely influence anybody. You can do anything through your mind, through consciousness. I can tell you some really cool things that I was doing, and I know I was doing them. And it's all about consciousness and motion. It's all about just knowing it, wanting it, and it's there. I'm not kidding you. There's no, insofar as space travel goes, it's consciousness through motion. In other words, I see a screen, I see a planet, I want to go there, I'm there. That's how it works.
Really?
Yes.
Have you been able to go to other planets?
I've been able to navigate, yes. I'm not going to really talk about a whole lot of it because it was in a controlled environment.
Okay.
But I will tell you, that's some of the stuff that I remember. And there are pieces of it, and I do remember some nice people involved in that. So, and those aren't screen memories. I mean, that's what we call consciousness in motion. If they're talking about taking ET home, I believe that's the way they're doing it. It's through consciousness. It's just, there's no time in the illusion of, there's no space, and it's in a controlled arena insofar as just projecting and doing it.
Well, I mean, when you say that, when you talk about having that remote viewing to be able to do that, you talk about AI. Is it possible for a more advanced being, let's say, because people talk about these beings being in our White House or in higher powers of government, is it possible for these beings to basically switch consciousness with us and, we're somewhere up in the space, in their bodies going, what the hell, let me out, and they're down here doing their own agenda?
Right. Well, there's soul dissension. What happens is we exist simultaneously in multiple world realities. I mean, on a mystical level, we really do as multidimensional beings. So as that exists, so does our quote-unquote starseed heritage, which means we're extraterrestrial. So if you want to look on it on that level, yes, we can have soul dissension, which is an alien embodiment taking over the host. Now, I think starseeds naturally do that. I'm not talking about DC, but I would say most of us actually do have that inheritance where we just actually download the celestial design work. I don't think we're lost in any other, limbo somewhere. I think that we're actually anchored in multidimensional space. But I believe we are, to some degree, walk-ins. I believe the starseeds are. I would say that a lot of the people in DC or just areas in covert intelligence can be entity controlled and taken over. And that's part of the brain template that they do with the EEG, heterodyning and cloning. And so all of that stuff, it has its plays, it has its little interaction.
Wow. So, great. Well, I guess that explains me. So
Me too, because I had a soul dissension way before these guys showed up to take me over with the program. So.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're going to take our last break here. We're going to come back. When we come back, I want to talk about your show and kind of some of your guests you got coming on here. I'm super excited about that. So last segment here with Solaris BlueRaven, host of the new show coming up March 18th, Hyperspace. Remember, you can call in 702-425 9230. I am going to try to see if we're still having issues with chat. Try to get that back up and running. That's kind of what we try to do here at the network. Things happen. But you're listening to Restricted Airspace with Tina Marie on the KCOR Digital Radio Network, broadcasting where? Out of Las Vegas, Nevada. That's where the network is located, but we have hosts from all around the world. Hey, my show's live every Friday night, 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern. If you're in Australia, I think it's Saturday morning sometime already. But hey, like they say, it's 5 o'clock somewhere.